Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have full review of the Moto Watch Fit. Let's get started. This represents another effort by Motorola to remain in the wearable market. It's interesting because Motorola was among the initial brands to introduce a wearable device that was quite appealing. Strangely, they discontinued it and have made additional attempts since then, now distancing a bit from Google's operating system. This is particularly intriguing given that Motorola is a brand that collaborates very closely with Google. Anyway, this is another attempt by them. Let's explore its offerings, as it will mainly excel in battery life while compromising in other areas. Its initial price was 2,999 pesos, about $160. However, remember, prices differ here and there, as taxes are included in Mexico. Come along with me to discover everything it has to offer us. Let's start talking about the design. We will find a square format with rounded corners, in this case protected with Gorilla Glass 3 and comes with sufficiently reduced bezels. Although they are not symmetrical bezels, it seems that one will be a little thicker than it will. Be convenient to have the screen in dark themes so that the edges are not so clearly visible. In this case, the watch has a thickness of 9.5 millimeters. I think it's going to be able to stand out in this aspect because it's not such a cumbersome watch, but it weighs 25 grams, so it's going to be super light. It's very comfortable, and we're going to find as materials a plastic case. The truth is that in this sense, it does not get to be too outstanding. Even the band is also perceived quite simple. The truth is that for this price, the material used is not going to be something very prominent. It is perceived as a much cheaper watch than it is in reality. In this case, consider that we will find two colors available, one validated by Pantone as we are already used to, and the strap. Fortunately, it has a nice design. As for the incorporation of Velcro to remove and put on easily, I like that because we avoid uncomfortable snaps and the placement is much simpler. In this case, we will find a single button with a single touch allows us to access the list of applications, or if you are exercising, also allows you to pause the exercise. While with two touches, we are going to go to the last application we had open, although the settings you can select if you want any other among few. If we have a long touch, we access the shutdown menu. Then you realize that it is quite simple. I think for the price range and disappointing, we would have liked to see at least two buttons, or in case of having, only one button. That at least was digital crown or something similar. But here we do not see something like that. Where it does not disappoint is in water resistance, because it has both 5 ATM and IP68, including also the waterlock mode, useful to avoid any kind of interaction of the screen with accidental activations by water. To exit this mode, you must press and hold the button and that's it. However, since it has no speaker, it is not going to emit any kind of sound to expel water or anything like that. The design is simple and the straps have a quick release button for easy use. Now let's discuss the screen. As it's a 1.9-inch OLED, luckily it's a wide screen, which is definitely an advantage. Here we see crystal, covering it with a slight curve at the edges. We'll find a resolution of 450 times 390 pixels with a density of 313 pixels per inch. I believe we'll have good sharpness, reaching a max brightness of 1000 nits. For the price, it's fine, not ultra spectacular, but the screen is satisfying. We also have an automatic brightness option, which is useful to avoid manual adjustments, but no. Some night mode, for example, that changes the colors when you're in very dark conditions. And although it does have an always on display mode, it doesn't really maintain the same design of the dial that you have with the screen active. So the feeling is that the truth is that it is very bad in this aspect because even much cheaper. Watches already have always on display dials equivalent to the one you have with the screen on. That's why I say the feeling is simple in each aspect. It also includes turning on the screen by wrist movement, as every watch should. Let's talk now a little bit about the sound, but this block is very short really because it has no speakers, no microphones, and simply what to say is that it is disappointing at this price not to find at least a speaker. The truth is I think Motorola has made a mistake in the price because if they wanted to launch a watch at this price, I think they should have put more functions or more features. To close this block, I should tell you a little bit about the vibration motor that will be the only way you know you are receiving notifications or something like that. Fortunately, it is a good vibration motor that has 3 intensity settings. It's not an X-axis motor that feels even more premium, but it's also not such a simple vibration that you even get to hear if you're going to perceive it on your wrist and it feels good enough quality. Given the price range, I can overlook the lack of an X-axis vibration motor. Let's discuss the health monitoring features of this watch. Starting with basic activity logs. It active calories, steps, and active time, or even an estimate of the kilometers you've traveled. Those are the basics, so let's explore more specialized features related to the heart or blood. You'll find heart rate monitoring every 6 minutes, although you can also set it to be continuous or to just be manual. So if you need to have constant monitoring of how your heart rate is moving, you can switch it to continuous mode, where it will also allow you to send alerts if your heart rate is very high or very low. I think that's quite functional for people who need to always be aware of this crucial issue. However, if you don't need to be so vigilant, you could set it to manual and help conserve the battery even more. Of course, it also provides you with a reference for your heart rate when you're at rest, and it can also measure the oxygen levels in your blood. But essentially, that's about it. It doesn't include the more advanced features that we observe in some other watches within this segment, but essentially, that's about it. It doesn't include the more advanced features that we observe in watches that are just a bit more expensive. In my opinion, it doesn't disappoint here. It has the necessary features that it should have. With regard to sleep analysis, we will also find positive things because it does include the REM, or sleep phase. It will also show us from the clock the last 3 sleep sessions we have had. But obviously in the application, you can see the complete history. It also has automatic detection so that you do not need to inform it that you are going to sleep. Something that is obvious, but well, it should be noted because it is a watch that in some other things has surprised us for the worse. Fortunately, in this case, it doesn't disappoint. In fact, it could also send you a reminder before you go to sleep to tell you to get ready. And it's also going to measure our blood oxygen while we're sleeping. And in addition, it also integrates a sleep mode when you go to sleep to prevent the screen from turning on or disturbing you. But hey, it doesn't specialize too much in this aspect of sleep either. It just has the general monitoring that you would expect from a wearable like this. It's also going to be able to measure your stress. It can be automatic or manual, or it can also let you know when you've been inactive for a long time. But, well, for example, it doesn't integrate fall detection or medication reminders or things that would be useful. We're also going to talk about sports monitoring now. In this case, it offers more than 100 modes. Depending on the sport you are active in, it can give you different types of parameters. For example, if you jump, the rope can give you the number of jumps. Or in some other sports, it can give you cadence, pace, and more. In that sense, it also delivers well. In fact, before starting the exercise, you can set goals. In this case, it also integrates GPS, so you can plot your route a bit while you're outdoors. And for those who like to walk, for example, without the need to activate that you went for a walk, the watch has automatic detection, although this must be enabled first because it is disabled by default, so it does not consume so much battery. If you want, you can enable it, although in this case it does not specify which sports or exercises will be automatically detected, so I guess it will only be running and walking. Something positive is that it also offers automatic pause, so if you are running and suddenly you take a short break, the watch can also automatically pause this monitoring so that you only monitor your effective time, although you can also turn it off if you want to continue monitoring at all times. In the exercise interface, you can scroll to the right and you will also find access to the player. The music player is available for you to listen to your favorite tracks directly. However, keep in mind that in this situation, the operating system has limitations. So while you are exercising, you won't be able to exit the application to perform other tasks without needing to fully complete your exercise session first. And finally, consider that it has no design for your own routines where you can choose how many minutes you want of different types of exercise. Here you have to manually switch between one and another. Inside the battery is actually where we are going to find its primary advantage. Its capacity is 300 milliampere hours. However, in the case of smartwatches, you shouldn't focus too much on the capacity because it can vary significantly based on the operating system. The manufacturer claims it can last up to 16 days, although this can obviously change depending on your usage. But this gives a rough average. During my charging test, within 15 minutes, it reached 37%, which is quite impressive. In 30 minutes, it went up to 67%, which would already permit you I've used it for several days. The full charge was slower towards the end, taking up to an hour and 44 minutes. However, I insist if you charge it for 30 minutes each week, you should have no issues using it. Now, let's dive into the software of this watch directly. I had already mentioned that it doesn't come with Wear OS. Instead, it has an operating system that Motorola developed on its own. It's important to point out that even though it isn't Wear OS, it does include Google's Fast Pair feature. This means that with your Android phone, you just need to bring it close to the watch, and it will be detected immediately, allowing you to link it effortlessly. This makes navigation straightforward and very easy to understand. Sliding from top to bottom, we access the quick settings panels, in fact. Here we have several options, for example, the manual or automatic. Brightness control, we can also activate the sleep mode to avoid accidental activations or annoyances while you are sleeping. We will also find the Do Not Disturb mode in addition to the water mode of which I had already spoken previously. In addition, we will discover the shortcut for using this clock as a flashlight, which includes the SOS function to emit a red signal. However, it's important to note that it turns on instantly, without any countdown or adjustment for brightness intensity. Moreover, we will find direct access to the timer and settings as well as options for complete silence or vibration mode depending on our preference. And finally, access the shutdown menu. Soon we'll see the settings. For now, those are the quick settings. Note, there are no different pages or anything like that. Swipe left to right. Now let's proceed to the list of applications, which we will discuss shortly. We can also access this through the button. By sliding from right to left, we can view quick indicators for various applications or parameters related to our health status. Additionally, we can check the weather forecast or manage playback controls. Sliding from the bottom up, we access the notifications, which notes that, for example, in the case of WhatsApp, will be grouped, and when you open this notification will appear all notifications of this application only sometimes. Sometimes only shows us the number of messages and chats, but let's say it is not so smart as to really show us a thread of conversations or something similar, then the notification management does not seem to be so advanced. Additionally, consider this scenario. If you ignore these notifications and suddenly get a new message, in reality, the new message doesn't show up immediately. And instead, it will just indicate that you have 5 new messages. When you begin to explore, you'll find that in reality, there are only 2 notifications you've received. Therefore, the truth is that the management of notifications isn't very positive. At times, you might end up receiving older messages, which gives you a rather straightforward experience. This can be quite misleading and may lead to confusion as it doesn't provide you with a clear and accurate picture of your message status. Also, keep in mind that it lacks quick reply options, but it can display some basic emojis. In fact, it can even show less common emojis. This is one of its few strengths. However, if you receive notifications while viewing the same message notifications, it can be troublesome. If you have friends who send you messages at a very fast pace, the watch will continuously vibrate without stopping. This can become quite bothersome as it seems to go a bit haywire, displaying notifications and attempting to show thumbnails. You end up having to slowly read through everything, and if more messages come in, they will overlap with the previous ones. In this regard, it doesn't provide us with a fully satisfying experience, and if someone sends you a sticker, know that of course it will not be able to show it. It only shows a generic emoji. The covers can be changed by holding down on the clock, and here we have some of the predefined ones. I think the variety is good enough, but note that it does not offer any kind of customization of the indicators or anything like that directly from the watch. Through the Moto Watch application, we are going to be able to access. Then we return to select again. We will have the ability to view every single watch face that we've installed on our device. Additionally, we can edit the list to remove some of the watch faces that are currently available on the watch if we choose to do so. Additionally, we have the ability to access this particular section where a wider variety is available. However, once more, the dials are not particularly advanced or sophisticated. You can't modify the elements of the indicators to fully tailor them to your preferences. Once again, this aspect feels somewhat lacking. In this situation, we won't come across an alternative cover store, unlike what we observe in Wear OS and other operating systems. Therefore, the options to personalize your screen are quite limited. For widget indicators, you can press and hold to move them or add other indicators to your home screen. As for apps, you are somewhat limited. Apart from health and sports monitoring apps, there aren't many add-ons. Of course, you can access the weather forecast and basic watch functions like the timer. You can set alarms here with repeat options for several days, but you can't customize the vibration pattern or any advanced features. You also have access to a stopwatch for marking laps, music control, a flashlight, and an option to ring your phone. As you can see, it's quite limited, lacking a payment app, camera shutter, and map or navigation app. Thus, it truly offers limited choices. Finally, let's take a look at the settings so you know for yourself what's available. In the Bluetooth settings, you can simply activate an alert for when the watch disconnects from the cell phone. This is very useful if you suddenly leave and had forgotten your cell phone. Regarding the display, it is the basics. It has no additional settings. In vibration, I already anticipated that you can have the intensity and various patterns available for alarms, timers, or other notifications are quite diverse. However, as I mentioned earlier, you are unable to customize these patterns for each individual alarm. Instead, you can only set a general pattern that applies universally to all alarms. For alerts. Additionally, we have the notifications section here, where you can set your preferences. You can decide if you want to receive notifications only when your phone is idle, or even when the screen is on. You can also choose whether to mute these notifications. Furthermore, you can select if you want a small orange dot to appear on the main screen, indicating new notifications. And moreover, you can opt for the screen to light up directly whenever you receive a message or something similar. In this particular case, it additionally provides you the ability to modify the app list view, allowing you to switch it to a grid layout if you find that more to your liking. Furthermore, there is an interesting feature that permits you to adjust the orientation of the clock and giving you the option to use it in this specific configuration if that suits your needs better. You have the flexibility to use it in reverse by utilizing the button on the left alongside the button on the right. In this regard, it truly provides excellent versatility. Additionally, it gives us the option to choose the action that occurs when you double press the power key. Moreover, it's important to note that we will also have the status indicators. These indicators will display when the watch is charging or indicate the current mode we are operating in. In the exercise section, we include the automatic detection along with an automatic pause feature. Additionally, in sleep mode, there is the option for automatic detection as well. As for the underwater lock mode, it doesn't require any configuration since it just has its own switch. Interestingly, you have the ability to set a pin on this watch. I'm not sure why, given it lacks more advanced options, but it's something you can do, and essentially that's all there is to it. In conclusion, this is yet another Motorola product where the price spoils everything. I believe this watch should be priced at half of what it is because it has multiple limitations. No speaker, no microphone, you can't connect wireless headphones. To store music, it doesn't let you respond to notifications, no camera shutter. Basically, it has many limitations that are hard to overlook given the price. I like that Motorola is trying again to expand its ecosystem and return to the world of wearables. But unfortunately, this has not been the best addition. Although in its favor, it has a battery life of up to 16 days and a function for the watch face to somehow optimize itself with artificial intelligence. But other than that, the truth is that it doesn't have too many strong points. For now, we have come to the conclusion of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to let us know. We look forward to seeing you again in the next one.